Alright, so let's take a look at this video here. Okay, so what we have going on here, we got Brandon Howerton. Brandon Howerton here's on the right hand side. You got two police vehicles. You got some guy here, I'm not for sure. We'll find out who we're looking from the perspective. But here is Joe Canty. Here's Joe Canty, and then this was the truck that he was driving. Now, to bring you up to speed, John Masters had fired 3 warning shots because he was threatened by Joe Canty. When Joe Canty was driving this truck, Joe Canty drove this truck very slow around his house, and it was enticing his dogs. John Masters yells at Joe Canty to get the hell out of here, and then Joe Canty laughs, and then he jerks the steering wheel towards John Masters. And then John Masters later on is going to fire a couple of warning shots. Okay, so this is the immediate aftermath. He had a thing that was on the back of his truck, and he lies, right? He's a compulsive liar. He had lied that he didn't see John Masters. He's lost, right? There's only one house on Delaware Trail, but he's saying that he only looked to the left and he looked to the right. He saw the house on the right, but he didn't see the 6-foot-tall man with 5 dogs. He didn't see that part. So somehow he just didn't see, just like to the right and in front of him, he just saw he didn't see a small vector. Okay, this is, total bullshit. There's also another claim that he makes where he says that he is running. Joe Canty accuses John Masters of being in the front yard, running towards him with a gun, shooting at him. Okay? Now, this is a large industrial truck. This is a large industrial truck. And what we're going to see here in this video is the police are going to walk around to see if there's any bullet fragments on the truck. Because if John Masters has a shotgun and it's loaded with Birdshot spreads, he's in the front yard, according to Joe Canty, he's running, he's chasing after Joe Canty with a shotgun with Birdshot spreads, but Joe Canty isn't hit. The large industrial truck isn't hit. The physics doesn't make any sense. The only evidence that the police have is this guy's word. This guy has already filed a false report. He said that it was youthful indiscretions, but he lied in court. So we know that he is a liar. We know that he lied under oath. He lied while he was testifying. And then what that case was he, 20-something years old, he stole a basketball goal. And, I should have asked some more questions about that, because that's just youthful indiscretions. I mean, you know how it is when you're just a Conejos County, Costilla County youth, and you're 20 years old, and you just want to steal a basketball goal. I don't understand where the false report comes from. I had asked him in court while he was testifying, have you ever been charged with any crime? And he said no. And you've never filed any false reports? And he says no, right there in the middle of court. And then I pointed out the evidence, and then he immediately changed his story. But he lies, right? So that's perjury. And I asked to impeach the witness. Judge says no. So I can't even ask him tough questions after he just did that. But I got some questions that I have now, because it's like, okay, I've been 20. I've been in my, I've been a toddler, I was in my 10s, 20s, and 30s before. So when he's saying youthful indiscretions, I never stole my neighbor's basketball goal. And then where's the false report? It doesn't make any sense, because the false report comes from where? He stole the basketball goal and it slept over his back, and then when they confront him and they say, hey, did you just steal that basketball goal? He says, no, I didn't steal that basketball goal. They actually stole it from me. And so is that the false report? Like, I don't understand where the false report was. But this isn't the first time that he's made false allegations.
GMC or...
Okay, so I believe that this is Schultz. We're looking from Keith Schultz's perspective. Right there behind Joe Canty is Hummel. Forget his first name, but Hummel, Hummel. So 3 police officers all talking to Joe Canty, and then I guess somebody's inside the vehicle too. And let's pay attention. Let's watch.
Like that. I don't know for sure what kind of gun it was he was shooting at me. It was a long rifle or either a shotgun or a rifle of some sort. Scared the shit out of me.
So he's saying that it was some sort of long gun, a rifle or a shotgun, and he was shooting it at me, right? So he's lying right there, lying right through his teeth. We also saw from a previous video how Robert Pickerel had told him to make sure he calls the police. Robert Pickerel told him to make sure he calls the police. And then Robert Pickerel's nowhere to be found. He's subpoenaed. He doesn't go to the trial. He doesn't testify at all. He's an eyewitness. He's one of the main eyewitnesses. He's right there. He could have seen, anything that had happened if he was paying attention, if he was out and about that day. But since he's a criminal and he's a compulsive liar, well, he's a criminal. So he's just going to commit crimes, hide inside his home, and then these cops can't figure that out. None of these police officers could figure out that Robert Pickerel was committing crimes, Sam Jepson was committing crimes, and Phil Greeny was committing crimes.
Alright. Not that I know of. Soon as I heard the gunshots, I just sort of ducked down, guns off.
Okay, so we see the truck right here, but do you see any, bullet fragments? The Hummel is going to eventually walk around and see if there's any bullet fragments in the truck. He's not hit. The truck isn't hit. To presume that a person with a shotgun chasing after a truck on the road from about 100 feet away couldn't hit that truck is to say that that person couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You couldn't hit the broadside. You were sitting in front of the barn and you shot at it with a shotgun and it spreads and you didn't hit the broadside of a barn. This is a large industrial truck. The reason why there's no bullet fragments on this truck, because what he's saying is total bullshit. There's another lie that he also says. Because if we're going to pretend that he's, being shot at, well, he's scared out of his mind, right? If you think that somebody is trying to shoot you, well, you're not going to go to the neighbor's house and just make your delivery. You're going to get the hell out of Dodge. You're going to, call the law or do whatever. But he goes ahead and makes his delivery. But he says that if, John Masters was on the front lawn running after him with a shotgun, with Birdshot, shooting at him, no bullet fragments on anything. But then, when he says he goes to Robert Pickerel's house, John Masters just disappears into thin air. Like, where did he go after that? That doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. The physics doesn't make sense because it's a lie. He is a compulsive liar, and he lied so many times on this case, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. It's not even funny how many times this guy had lied.
Check it out? Yeah, I haven't really heard it. Look. All I know is this scared the shit out of me.
You're also going to have Annie Kelly point out that I say cuss words, but he's, saying this motherfucker and man, I'm scared the shit out of me. He's cussing up a guy like a goddamn sailor. They act like he's a model citizen, like he's, Jesus Christ himself or, Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. This isn't Martin Luther King Jr., okay? This isn't Mr. Honesty. He is a lie. The only evidence that they have is his lie. And so these police officers, because John Masters had called 911 a dozen or 2 times and they're sick and tired of him calling 911, they're going to go arrest John Masters based on this guy's word. They're going to ignore all those crimes that had happened to John Masters because of what this guy lies about. And if you could tell earlier, his arm was shaking when he was here at the door. Just notice that too.
Chevy or GMC or something like that. I don't know for sure what kind of gun it was he was shooting at me. It was a long rifle or either a shotgun or a rifle of some sort. Scared the shit out of me.
So you could kind of see him shaking.
Alright.
You saw his hand shaking right there?
Not that I know of. Soon as I heard the gunshot.
Because he's lying. He's lying through his teeth. So, he's nervous. He's nervous about how he's lying about John Masters, who's never done anything to him.
I just sort of ducked down, dropped things and all that. So, fuck it.
Really checked it out?
Yeah, I haven't really heard
Let's
it.
look.
That's really all I know is it scared the shit.
So there's Hummel walking around, seeing if there's any bullet fragments, seeing if the truck was hit in any way, shape, or form. He's only driving, the first time he passes by 3 miles an hour. Second time he passes by, he's not driving much faster, maybe 10 miles an hour, maybe 5 miles an hour.
He was Army, I was Navy.
What was your MLS?
11 Bravo.
Nice.
Well,
Infantry.
Yeah.
I was 13 Bravo. I stayed back.
for my first 4 years, I was 11 Bravo. Then I switched over to 45 Bravo.
So now they're all bonding over their military service, right? One's Navy, one's Army, and then he asked his MS, what is your MS, which I guess is like his specialty or something, military specialty.
Which is a small arms repairman. Didn't use any of it.
I did 11 Bravo for about a year, and then I got out right afterwards. Alright, hold on. I got a text from my boss. Let them know you guys are here.
And it's incredible how it's day and night. When I called this, both this guy and Schultz maybe a week prior, and they were just harassing the shit out of me, asking me the dumbest questions ever for about 30 minutes, interrogating me, giving me an inquisition. He's got a right to privacy, and just kind of trying to push all the buttons that they could push because they want to effectuate arrest. They want to provoke a situation so they could arrest me. That's why they did. But it's interesting to see how he acts when he's, doesn't want to screw the person over. Seems like he could be reasonable at some times and unreasonable at other times.
Where did this happen at? You go up here to the Batos Bridge, take a left on Seminole, follow it up to Delaware. Right at Delaware, there's an intersection. His house is on the southeast corner. Brown house, like paperboard looking building, looks like a meth lab. I don't know, it scared the fuck out of me. Is that gonna be Canejos?
No. That's if okay, he takes left on Delaware. That's back into.
It's right there at the intersection in Delaware and Seminole. Okay. I got a video of him.
So that's incredible. He's trying to say that my house looks like a meth house. It's actually a half-built house, and I haven't finished it. And it's going to be a 2-story house, and it was beautiful. And it was going to be nice. And because I went through planning and zoning, I had an ambitious plan. Instead of just hurrying up and building a tiny house and then immediately start living, instead I'm having to do this stupid planning and zoning crap. I got the septic tank in the ground. That's $1,500. I paid Colin Romero, $400 or so. And I paid the permits, which is $600, at road access and building permit, and then septic tank permit. You got to, pay for a permit to put the septic tank in. And then I had to pay for somebody to dig the damn hole. That guy was a jerk. And then I had to pay another guy to cover the hole up. So by me being there in Costilla County, I was increasing the property value of not just the neighbor, the neighboring area, but all of Costilla County. I was bringing respectability to Costilla County. I had put a septic tank in the place, and so I'm creating jobs, right? So other people are being employed and getting money because I'm living there, and then because I paid the permits, I'm paying the government. So I paid for my fair share of taxes. I paid my fair share of taxes. I wasted so much time. I wasted a year in an RV park, so I'm wasting money in rent at an RV park, and then I have to drive all the way over here and try to dig a hole, which I was going to try to do by shovel, try to save some money, and just so much headache to do everything on the up and up and to do things right. And they're going to say that the guy that called 911, the guy that paid for his permit, got the septic tank in, the guy that was a victim of several crimes is now the bad guy? Oh, how convenient. How convenient. They're either trying to assange their conscience, or to me, it just seems like it's obvious. The Schultz, the guy that we're looking through right here, he had testified that John Masters had called 911 all day, every day. Well, maybe a dozen or two times. So, John Masters lives there for less than 2 years. So out of 700 days, 24 times, just estimate he was called. So all day, every day doesn't mean that he called 700 times, but, several times a day. So that's what, 2,000 times? All day, every day? John Masters didn't call 2,000 times. But what Keith Schultz is admitting to is that he was annoyed. He was so pissed off and annoyed. Oh, John Masters is sitting there. I mean, once people have already took shots at you, I'm supposed to pretend that somebody who's just sitting at the end of my driveway, for an hour is kosher. Oh, yeah, that's legit. Okay, this person, over here tried to take my life, and now there's a similar truck right here. I'm supposed to just pretend that the funny business and the weirdness, also in terms of liability, I thought I was covering my butt by liability. Not only was I being a good citizen by reporting all the crimes that I had seen, but not only was I being a good citizen, but in terms of liability, what happens if some tiny little thing had happened? Because there was people that was messing over there by Melissa Shimkovitz's house. So they're over there messing by, Shimkovitz's house, and then later on that house is ransacked, and then it's, burnt down or demolished. Liability doesn't fall back on me. I mean, I had, saw that some little thing had happened. I didn't report it. It just feels like liability can go both ways.
Taunting me as I was trying to get out of there. So, hold on.
And then when he describes it, he's saying that he goes to the intersection of Seminole and Delaware. So that's exactly the intersection that we're talking about. The intersection of Delaware, and then he says on the southeast side. So he knows, the house is on the southeast side, and he insults me by saying it's a meth house. Hiram Richardson's house looks like a damn meth house, and it kind of sucks because the joke I used against Hiram Richardson is, coming right back on me, so that sucks. And then the fucking Pickerel's an ex-criminal, ex-con, ex-felon or some crap. So I don't know what he was, put in jail for. He had a rifle, but he was real nervous for having the rifle. And it was makes me think that, I don't know if it was meth or not, but he has a meth attitude and a meth, way of living. So.
An email address you can send that to.
I just do not want to go back that direction.
I don't blame you.
So,
Not one bit.
This is my last delivery. I was going home.
So it always goes.
And then he says,
Right?
that's how it always goes, right? Oh, we're just buddy-buddy here. He's going to testify, too, that he wasn't injured, and that the thing that really pissed him off was my attitude, John Masters' attitude afterwards. That's what really pissed him off. It was your attitude. So, if he's not injured, then that means everything that happened to John Masters is an injury. And it's a continuing injury, and it doesn't stop. They had nothing but deliberate indifference. The guy that was spotlighting me, and he comes out, he says, well, he's got a right to privacy, That's what Hummel said. And then Hummel's going to lie on the stand, too. He was like, do you remember, answering a call and going out there a week or two? And he goes, no. No. He was really, what do you want, skittish? He answered questions on the stand really weird. He's a really weird dude. But I feel like since, he knows he's corrupt and he's, a piece of shit who was trying to provoke me into, saying something to him so he could arrest me because I called 911 too many times, he didn't even go over there and stop those people. He didn't even question them. He didn't talk to them. There's some sort of field party, and every time they would go from Melissa Shimkovitz's house to the field party over there on Bluff Circle, they would just make sure they shine their bright lights on my house for an extended period of time. And that just happened, for about 1 to 2 hours. And, I got dogs, and they're barking up a storm, so because there's a threat. There's a threat in the neighborhood. I'm supposed to pretend that there's not a threat. And then if I don't call the police and something happens to me, there's no documentation. So I don't know what these assholes expected me to do, but he definitely had deliberate indifference. He didn't give a shit. He didn't stop the people that was doing the thing. And then Keith Schultz even actually one time came out and caught Robert Pickerel in the act of harassing me, of flickering his light at me. He caught him in the act. He came in with his headlights off, and then he shined his lights over at them. Immediately, Pickerel shines his lights back at him.
All the systems.
Alright. There we go. Hopefully it'll work. Let me try to stop shaking too.
So I don't know exactly where we're at right here. And then that's it. It looked like it might have been Cruz Soto that was in the truck. And then he called him over there.
Let me try to stop shaking too.
I suppose that could be Velasquez. I'm not for sure exactly who that is. But that's 4 of the police officers of the 5 police officers that's going to come onto my property and then eventually arrest, me. And there's a couple more things I want to say. If you have 2 people, right, person A and person B, and one is saying something that had happened, say they go into a forest, and there's no other witnesses, they're just saying competing claims, the presumption of innocence, you are innocent until proven guilty. All you have is the word of one, the word of person A, and the word of person B. There's no way to determine that, unless one person is just Mr. Honesty and one person is Mr. Liar, and actually that would work into my favor, frankly. Not only do I not lie, if anything, I might be a pathological truth teller, right? And so what that is, that's Hobbes. That's Hobbes, and that's also, Puffendorf or Grotius? I don't know. It's just logic, too. Logic will get you there. But person A and person B are out in the woods, and one person says that the other one kicked him in the shin, and there's no markings on the shin. There's no physical evidence whatsoever. All you have are their words. How come there's no marking? Well, I had, thick pants legs. Oh, okay. So maybe he kicked him, maybe he didn't kick him. But all you have is one person's word. You talk to the other person, and then they say, no, that's not what had happened. I don't even know where that come from. We did get into some argument, and he stole some of my pans. We were trying to do a cookout and stuff, and then it just, we had an argument. Then we didn't do our camping. We didn't do any hiking or camping afterwards. So what that means is you need something else. You need something else to prove your case. That's not enough information. You need something else to prove your case. If all you have is person A and person B, and they got 2 competing claims, no physical evidence, nothing else, and Hobbes says you need a 3rd witness. You need another witness. You need a witness or 2 to be able to determine who is the guilty party, who's the innocent party. Unfortunately, in this, system, what they're doing here, if the person complains and they signed a document, we're going to presume this guy's a victim. We're going to call him a victim for about 2 years, and we're going to call him, the victim, and he's the victim, but there's been no, conviction. There's been no due process. There was no probable cause hearing. It was a kangaroo court, frankly. And, I got a bunch of good case law, but you need some witnesses. And so my right to subpoena, the 6th Amendment, there's also Colorado Bill of Rights, protects my right to confrontation and subpoena compulsory process. So there's 4 eyewitnesses and 3 material witnesses. So 3 people that, knew some things about the case, but the eyewitnesses, like how could you deny the eyewitnesses? Person A, person B are out in the woods, and maybe nobody actually saw the exact kick of the shin that's being alleged, but they would know the personality, they would know what was going on, a yelling, an argument, they would know something, right? And the eyewitnesses, Robert Pickerel, who committed a bunch of fucking crimes, he's the one that also gets Joe Canty to file charges, he doesn't go into the court. So out of the videotape, you see 3 people, you hear 3 people. So there's 3 people that's, in the videotapes that we see, John Masters, John Canty, and Robert Pickerel. So if you're the DA, or the judge, if you're anybody who cares about the truth, then you would want to know what the eyewitnesses have to say, because you want to find out the truth. You're not just going to believe some person's words. That's crazy. So there's 4 eyewitnesses. Why wouldn't the prosecutor, why wouldn't the judge want the 4 eyewitnesses to show up? Phil Greeny had a 1-day warrant, an insane 1-day warrant out for his arrest in order to, come testify. And then Ann Kelly says, I'm not allowed to, walk away from the courthouse. So who's going to do it? And then what was crazy, too, as soon as Phil Greeny gets that 1-day warrant, then a whole bunch of police officers race away from the police station. And then my witness, an older lady, Eva Miller. She was there, and when they all raced away, she presumed that they all were doing their sirens and running, away to go get Phil Greeny. And I kind of thought that too, but then in hindsight, they did the opposite. There was a one-day warrant for Phil Greeny, and they all took off somewhere else because, we got some other place to be. We got some other stuff to do. We don't have enough time to get this person in for trial. They didn't care about the truth. They didn't give a damn about the truth. I don't know why they're protecting Robert Pickerel so goddamn much. Keith Schultz saw him in the act. Keith Schultz saw him harassing me. I don't know why they're protecting Phil Greeny. And E. Kelly said, did an objection for Phil Greeny. And so Phil Greeny committed a bunch of crimes. He had a photograph in his hand. He's not an eyewitness, but there was a lady that lived there at that green house, which is just down the road. If they were outside the house, they could have seen me walking my dogs. They could have seen me walking my dogs. They could have seen him driving the truck up and down. When he's over at Robert Pickerel's house, that's just below the hill, so they're not going to see that. But they'll see me, and they would see when he drives in front of the house. So if there was anything to be seen, and then also they took a picture. I drove around the house afterwards, and when I drove around the house, when I drove around the block, I yelled at that house saying, "Stop messing with me," to Phil Greeny and to that lady, and that lady took a picture, and I flipped them off. So they have a picture of me flipping them off as I'm driving away from them, and the next day, after the bail bond was posted, I come back to the house, and the guy is, up my goddamn motherfucking lawn saying, hey man, you coming over there yelling at me? What's that about, huh? What's that about? So that's just incredible. It's almost like these people understand America's legal system better than I do. If you're arrested and accused, well then we're just going to try to paint you up as a piece of crap as much as we can, and we're going to, even turn up the heat. We're going to continue to harass you. And we're going to, just walk on your property. Phil Greeny had a photo in his hand, so he doesn't have a photo processing thing, so it's probably a digital photo, right? A digital photo he printed up. And so the photo came from that lady. So that lady took a photo. That lady is an eyewitness to the events. Then you also had Adam Clayton. Adam Clayton got the subpoena, and he said, he's in Arizona. He's in Arizona. He originally was from Boulder. When it came to the 2 years that I lived in Costilla County, he was there for a year, and he had stayed there. And then in the videotape, you could see his truck. You could see his truck at the house, and so he could see, a lot of the things that were going on too. He could see everything that Robert Pickerel was doing. He's on the other side of the hill. So you have Phil Greeny's, I don't know if it was his old lady or if it was his mother or his auntie or whatever. But the lady that was staying at Phil Greeny's house, who used to be Jacqueline Mitchell's house, and it's also owned by a Gonzalez. The judge's name is Gonzalez. The house is named Gonzalez. Okay, Gonzalez is a popular name. Maybe there's a connection there, maybe there's not. But if I ask the judge, are you related to him, I'm sure they'll just say no. But do they? And then that would make a lot of sense to me, because why would you allow Phil Greeny to commit crimes against me? Well, hell, that's, he's staying at my uncle's house. My uncle's there. He's renting that house to Phil Greeny. I'm going to protect the tenant because all the information I've been getting has been from my uncle, and it's my tenant that's been telling the uncle. There's also a right-wing sovereign, Nazi movement that's out there. So Costilla County is synonymous with the right-wing sovereign Nazis. The sovereign Nazis are running roughshod over all these people. They had a big thing with the planning and zoning. The reason why I came in lawfully with planning and zoning is because the Nazis were against planning and zoning. They were doing a bunch of protests, and it was getting crazy. Cruz Soto and Colleen Romero, when she was a police officer, were going around asking people for their permits out there. And so I want to go in, you only have one time to make a first impression. So I entered Costilla County as lawfully and as, good and right and morally and ethically and properly as I could possibly, imagine. And all for nothing. All for nothing. You think the person that read 100 pages of planning and zoning, you think the person calling 911, you think that's the person going around committing crimes? You've lost your goddamn mind. So there's Hummel walking away, just like he walked away from his responsibility. of being a police officer instead of, it was just deliberate indifference. It was just deliberate indifference. My phone calls, I was experiencing harassment, but there was also arsons. So because I had called the police or 911, that stopped the house fires from getting out of control and then just burning the damn prairie down. And, even though there were several RVs were burnt down and some other shack structures, and then that one guy, John Krim's house was burnt down. And of course, the McDonald's, which, no hard feelings there. But that was the Nazis. The sovereign Nazis, burned the house of one of their own because he was engaged in child abuse. So, because I was there, and then I also saw another 911 call record log that had pointed out a horse. There's wild horses that run around out there, and I had heard that one was like neighing up a storm, like it was caught inside a fence or had gotten attacked by a dog or some wolves or something, and I was just really worried about it, and it was just screaming. But then the way I also think about like coyotes or wild dogs, sometimes they can feign an injury and then get you to go over there and then attack you. So it sounded to me like a neigh. It sounded like a horse, because there are wild horses. There's even like a little donkey that runs around with the horses that were out there. It's kind of a misfit, group of wild horses. But I like the wild horses, frankly. There was one time me and Tecumseh were out there running around with the wild horses. There's a book called Women Who Run Wild with Horses or something like that. So just getting my hippie on, my spiritual hippiness on. And yeah, so that's what this main video here is. It's titled 2021-4781 Jonathan Masters. I'll go ahead and put this little link here, because there's other places where there's there's 8 videos of the police arrest, and so there's well documented. But I thought it was interesting that this video is the one that I clicked on, and this is Schultz. And so I believe that Schultz was this first one here, and then Schultz was this one too. Maybe this 1 and 2 here, maybe this is Soto's. Maybe I should click on those here in a second. We'll take a look at some of those later on.